You shouldn't have listened.
The house came with a welcome binder. That should have been my first clue, because nobody makes a welcome binder for a rental that's been in the family for years, unless they're trying to smooth something over. Still, I was grateful at the time. It was February, the kind of February where the cold doesn't feel sharp. It feels heavy, like it's pressing down on the whole neighborhood. My lease in the city ended fast. My new job started faster, and this place was the only one that didn't ask for a ridiculous deposit. It wasn't a cabin in the woods. It wasn't some Gothic mansion. It was a plain, older house at the end of a cul-de-sac, with a wide front window and a porch light that made the snow look blue at night. One story, unfinished basement, a detached garage I didn't care about. Quiet. Normal. I moved in on a Sunday and spent the whole first week doing what you do when you're alone in a new place, making it yours. Folding clothes, hanging towels, walking, room to room with a mug of coffee just to feel the layout. Listening to the pipes and telling myself every sound was ordinary. The binder sat on the kitchen counter like it wanted to be seen. White plastic cover, 3 ring holes, paper slightly curled. It had my name written on a sticky note stuck to the front in block letters. Inside were instructions for everything. How to reset the furnace, where the water shutoff was, what day trash pickup happened, even a map of the circuit breaker box with labels that actually matched the switches. The last section was called Winter Notes. That was my favorite part at first because it made the owner sound thoughtful. It warned about ice on the back steps. It suggested keeping a trickle of water running if the temperature dropped below 0. It explained the odd draft near the living room window and how a rolled towel could fix it. Then there was a page with no title, just a short paragraph in the same neat font as everything else. It said, "If you hear water running in the house when you're not using any, check the basement floor drain first. Sometimes the line breathes in winter. It's harmless." And under that, in smaller text, "If the drain cap is already off when you go down there, put it back on before you come upstairs." I remember actually laughing once. A quiet laugh in my kitchen by myself because it sounded like superstition dressed up as plumbing advice. I didn't think about it again for days. The first time I heard the water, it was late. Not past midnight, but late enough that the house had settled into that deeper silence where you notice every little change. I'd been unpacking until my shoulders ached. I shut the last closet door and stood in the hallway, just breathing, enjoying the stillness. That's when I heard it. A thin, steady sound, like water hitting water. Not a faucet, not a shower, more like a small, constant pour. At first I thought it was outside, snowmelt dripping from a gutter. But it was too steady. It didn't have the random pauses and plinks of drip, drip. This was smooth. I went to the kitchen and checked the sink. Dry. I checked the bathroom. Dry. The toilet wasn't running. The sound felt like it was under the house, not inside the walls. I stood with my hand on the basement door, listening. The water sound was clearer there, like I'd moved closer to the source. I thought about the binder page and that sentence about the line breathing. Fine, old house. I grabbed a flashlight anyway, more out of habit than fear, and went down the basement stairs. The basement smelled like cold concrete and dust. The air was noticeably cooler and my footsteps sounded too loud. The water noise wasn't louder down there exactly, but it had direction now, like it was coming from the far corner where the utility sink and floor drain were. The floor drain was a round metal opening in the concrete near the wall, with a cap that looked like it screwed in. I'd seen it during the move-in inspection and hadn't cared. The cap was off. It wasn't sitting beside it. It wasn't leaning against the wall. It wasn't anywhere. The drain itself was open, a dark circle, and from it came that steady sound of water like something was pouring into a pipe below. I stood there with the flashlight beam shaking a little, not because I was scared yet, because confusion does that. Confusion makes your body feel wrong. I walked closer and crouched. The beam showed moisture around the lip of the drain like it had been splashed. The water sound was coming from deeper than the opening. Like it wasn't water coming out, it was water moving somewhere inside. I called out without thinking. "Hello?" My voice sounded stupid and small in that space. Nothing answered. Nothing shifted. I was bent over the drain when I noticed something else. A faint smell, almost like wet soil. Not sewage, not rot, like dirt that's been warmed up. I straightened and swept the flashlight beam around the basement. Pipes, boxes I hadn't unpacked, a stack of old paint cans left by the owner. All normal. Then I saw the cap. It was on top of the hot water heater. That should have been impossible for two reasons. One, I hadn't been down there since move-in day. Two, the hot water heater was tucked in a corner behind a support post, and the cap was sitting perfectly centered on top like someone had placed it there on purpose. I walked over and picked it up. Cold metal, damp like it had been washed. I didn't like how deliberate it felt. I didn't like that my first thought was, someone's been in my house, and my second thought was, no, they haven't. Because nothing else looked disturbed. I went back to the drain and screwed the cap on. The water sound stopped immediately. Not faded, not slowed, just stopped, like a switch was thrown. I stood there with my hand still on the cap, listening to the sudden absence. A house can be loud in winter. Pipes ticking, furnace cycling, the wood doing tiny pops. But down there, for a few seconds, it felt like the basement held its breath. I went upstairs and locked the basement door more firmly than I needed to. That night, I slept with the hallway light on. I told myself it was because I was still unpacking and didn't want to trip in the dark if I got up. I said it out loud to myself like that made it true. The next day was normal. So normal that by dinner I felt embarrassed about how much the drain thing had gotten under my skin. I reminded myself the cap could have been left on the water heater by the maintenance guy. I reminded myself old houses do weird things in winter. The water sound came back 3 nights later. Same time window. Late. Quiet. Only this time I didn't go down immediately. I stood at the top of the basement stairs with my hand on the door, listening. The sound was steady, patient. It didn't feel like a leak. It felt like a faucet left open somewhere that shouldn't exist. I went down, flashlight in hand, and there it was again, the cap off the drain. This time, the cap was on the workbench. I hadn't put it on a workbench. I hadn't even looked at the workbench. And the water sound. This time it wasn't just water. There was another noise layered in it, faint but present. A soft, intermittent click, like something lightly touching metal, then stopping. Touch, stop, touch, like a fingernail against a pipe. I froze halfway across the basement. My brain did that math where it tries to find a harmless explanation because harmless explanations are easier to live with. The furnace? No. A loose pipe? Maybe. The house shifting? Sure. But the drain cap being removed, again, twice, by itself? That didn't fit. I walked to the drain and crouched, keeping the flashlight beam steady on the opening as if light could pin things down. The air smelled stronger of wet soil. Now, the clicking sound stopped. I waited. Then the water sound changed. It deepened, like the stream got heavier for a second, and I felt the smallest vibration through the concrete under my knees. A subtle tremor, like a large appliance turning on. I stood up fast, heart racing, and backed away from the drain. The moment I stood, The clicking started again. 2 light touches, a pause, another touch. Not random, not mechanical. It sounded like a signal. My hands were cold. I was holding the flashlight too hard. I walked to the workbench and grabbed the cap. It was damp again. Damp in a way that didn't make sense because nothing in that basement was wet except the drain lip. I went back and screwed it on. The water sound cut off instantly again. The clicking stopped at the same moment. And then, in the silence that followed, I heard something else. A slow, soft scrape from inside the wall behind the drain, like something dragging along the inside of a pipe. It wasn't loud. If I hadn't been standing still, listening hard, I would have missed it. It moved upward, just a little, and then stopped. I stood there staring at the wall like my eyes could see through concrete. I didn't go upstairs right away. I walked the entire basement perimeter with the flashlight, checking every window, every vent, every corner. Nothing was open, nothing was broken, nothing looked touched. That's what made it worse. I wanted evidence of a real intruder because real intruders obey physics. Real intruders leave marks. Whatever this was, it was operating through routine. I went up and made myself sit on the couch like a normal person. I turned on a show I didn't care about. I left every light on. When I went to bed, I pushed a chair under my bedroom doorknob, even though the knob didn't need it. At 3:12 a.m., I woke up to the sound of water running upstairs. Not downstairs, upstairs. In the bathroom. The sink. A steady stream like someone had turned it on halfway. I sat up so fast my neck hurt. My mouth went dry. I didn't move at first. I listened. The water ran for a full 5 seconds. Then the faucet shut off. I lay there staring into the dark, waiting for my brain to calm down, telling myself, pipes do that. Pressure changes, air in the line. But when I got up and went into the bathroom, the sink was dry. Not mostly dry. Dry. Like it hadn't been used. The mirror was fogged anyway. Just the center portion, like someone had breathed on it, and the rest of the glass stayed cold. There was a faint oval of condensation right at face height. I stood there with my hands on the sink and stared at that fogged patch until it started evaporating. And right before it disappeared, I saw a single fingerprint trail through it, like someone had drawn a line down the middle with one finger. I didn't touch the mirror. I didn't wipe it. I backed out of the bathroom and shut the door. The house felt too big after that. Too many corners, too many quiet spaces. I went to the kitchen and opened the welcome binder again, flipping through like maybe I'd missed the part where it explained how to handle this without feeling insane. That untitled page was still there, the exact same lines. If the drain cap is already off when you go down there, put it back on before you come upstairs. I read it 3 times. Then I realized what the sentence actually implied. It didn't say, if you take it off. It said, if it's already off. Like it expected the cap to be removed. Like it expected me to find it. Like it knew this was a thing that happens. I stood in my kitchen at 3:20 a.m. holding that binder, and I felt the first real wave of anger cut through the fear. Because if the owner knew and didn't tell me properly, then what else were they not telling me? I grabbed my coat and my keys and went outside to my car just to breathe cold air and feel like I still had control of it, where my body was. The cul-de-sac was silent, snow-crusted and pale under streetlights. My breath made clouds. My car windows were frosted, and when I turned back toward the house, I saw the basement window, the small one, near ground level, half buried in snow. The glass looked dark but not reflective, and behind it, I saw something pale shift across the little rectangle of view, slow, as if something was passing right in front of it. Not a shadow, not a person, just a pale movement, like skin close to glass. I stood there frozen, keys in my fist, and the porch light buzzed once and steadied. I went back inside, locked the door, and didn't go back to sleep. By morning, I'd decided on one thing. I was going to the basement again in full daylight, and I was going to find the cap, where it belonged, and I was going to leave it there. Because whether this was plumbing or something else, the house was trying to train me, and I hated the idea of being trained. By late morning, the sun had done that weak winter thing where it brightens everything without warming it. The snow in the yard glittered like glass. From inside, the house looked harmless again. Kitchen table, mug ring on the counter, my coat slung over a chair. Ordinary. That's the trap with places like that. Daylight makes you feel dramatic for being afraid the night before. I made myself eat something. Toast, eggs. I kept telling myself the same sentence. Go down there in daylight, look at it like a problem, fix it like a problem, move on. I didn't call the owner yet. I didn't want to give them the satisfaction of hearing my voice shaky. I also didn't want to hear them pretend they didn't know what I was talking about. If I called, it would be after I had something concrete, a photo, a missing piece, a reason they couldn't shrug off. I grabbed the screwdriver from my moving box and a small wrench because my brain was still trying to live in the world where this was plumbing. I also brought the welcome binder because I wanted to stare at that winter notes page down there like a challenge. The basement door was shut when I went to it, which made me pause. I'd left it shut, but after last night, I'd expected it to be open again, like the house was going to prove a point. I put my hand on the knob. Cold metal. Normal. I opened it and went down. In daylight, the basement looked smaller, less like a hollow underneath my life and more like a storage area. The bulb still flickered, but the windows let in enough gray light that I didn't feel like I was walking into a different world. The mirror was still leaned in the storage corner the way I'd left it during move-in. The old paint cans looked the same. My unpacked boxes sat in a row like quiet witnesses. I went straight to the drain. The cap was on, screwed tight. No water noise, no smell of wet soil. I crouched and put my hand on the concrete around it. Cold and dry. Actually laughed again, breath puffing out in front of my face because it felt like the house had been messing with me and now it was pretending it hadn't. I stood up and opened the welcome binder to that untitled page right there under the basement light. If you hear water running in the house when you're not using any, check the basement floor drain first. Sometimes the line breathes in winter. It's harmless. If the drain cap is already off when you go down there, put it back on before you come upstairs. I read it and looked down at the cap like it was a mouth. Then I did something I regret in hindsight. I talked to it like it could hear me. "Okay," I said out loud in my empty basement. "Fine. It stays on." I left the basement with that strange, bitter calm you get when you feel like you've drawn a line in your head. For the rest of the day, nothing happened. I went grocery shopping. I washed sheets. I made a point of living loudly, music playing while I cooked, the TV on in the background, water running when I brushed my teeth. I wanted the house to understand I was not going to be trained into being quiet. By evening, my nerves had loosened a fraction. Then I saw the first thing that made my stomach drop in a clean, simple way. It was a wet footprint. Not mud tracked in from outside, not snow melt. A single, wet print on the hallway runner, right outside the bathroom door. I stared at it and didn't move because my brain did that thing where it tries to fix the picture by blinking. The print was the size of a bare foot, but the toes were wrong. There were too many. Not an obvious extra toe like a cartoon, just the spread was too wide. The impression too long, like the front of the foot had more shape than it should. I crouched, close enough to smell it. The wetness didn't smell like dirty snow. It smelled like basement air, concrete and damp. There was no second print, just the one. I backed away and went to the kitchen for paper towels because action felt safer than staring. When I came back, the print was still there, but the wet edge looked like it was drying from the inside out, as if the moisture was being pulled down through the fabric. I pressed a paper towel to it. The towel came away barely damp. I pressed harder. Still barely anything. Like the runner was wet, but the water refused to transfer. I didn't know what to do with that, so I did what people do when they don't know what to do. I cleaned anyway. I scrubbed the spot until it looked normal. I washed my hands. I checked the locks. I convinced myself it was condensation, something from the bathroom. Maybe I stepped there earlier and didn't remember. But I avoided looking at my own feet when I thought that. That night, I didn't sit in the living room. I sat at the kitchen table where I could see the hallway and the basement door at the same time. The house sounded normal for a while, furnace clicking on, then off, a soft knock of pipes cooling. I kept waiting for the water noise. At 10:18 p.m., my upstairs bathroom faucet turned on. Not a drip, a clean, steady stream, like a hand had lifted the handle and set it halfway. I shot up so fast the chair legs scraped, and that sound made my chest tighten because it echoed something I'd heard through the wall downstairs. The faucet ran for maybe 3 seconds, then shut off. I stood in the doorway of my bathroom and stared at the sink. Dry. The drain was dry. The basin looked like it hadn't been used in hours, but the mirror was fogged in that same centered oval, right at face height. My skin prickled. I turned away from the mirror on instinct because I didn't want to see anything appear in it. I didn't want to learn what my brain might invent. I walked out and shut the bathroom door. And the moment the latch clicked, I heard water running downstairs from the basement, thin and steady. The house wasn't hiding it this time. It was announcing it, like it had been waiting for me to close the bathroom door as a cue. I stood at the top of the basement stairs with my hand on the knob again, listening. The water sound didn't waver. I could have ignored it. I could have gone to bed and let it do whatever it was doing down there. But the wet footprint flashed in my mind, that wrong spread of toes, and I realized the house wasn't just making noise. It was leaving traces. So I went down. No flashlight. I didn't want to give myself the excuse of darkness. I flipped the basement light on and walked straight to the drain. The cap was off. This time it was sitting beside the drain like someone had unscrewed it and placed it down carefully. And this time, there was something else. A ring of dampness around the drain, not random splatter, an even circle, like the concrete had been pressed by something wet and round. Like a jar. My throat tightened. The water sound came from below, steady and quiet. The smell of wet soil was back, stronger. I crouched and looked at the cap. It had faint marks on it, like someone's fingers had been there, but the marks weren't oily. They were matte, like the cap had been touched by something dry, then breathed on. I picked it up. Cold, damp. I didn't screw it on right away. I hovered over the opening, listening, and the sound of water shifted just a little, like it reacted to my presence, like it had been waiting for me to notice. The moment I started threading the cap, the water sound deepened again, and the concrete under my palm vibrated faintly. I froze with the cap half on. The vibration wasn't a machine hum. It felt like movement, like something heavy adjusting itself below. Then, from behind me, in the storage corner, I heard the mirror crack. Not shatter, crack. A brittle snap, like a stress fracture spreading. I turned. The mirror was still leaning where it had been, but a new line had appeared in the glass, running diagonally from the top corner down toward the center. Clean, fresh. I stared at that line, then looked back at the drain. The cap was still half-threaded. And the water sound. This is the part that made me feel truly stupid for wanting it to be plumbing. Slowed. Not because I'd closed it, I hadn't. It slowed like someone controlling a faucet below was easing it shut. The sound diminished until there was only the faintest trickle. Then nothing. I stood there with my hands shaking, cap still not fully on. In the silence, I heard a soft scrape again from inside the wall behind the drain. Not the long drag from before, a shorter movement, like something repositioning. Then a quiet exhale. Not from my mouth, not from the furnace, from somewhere low and close. It felt like cold breath released into the space beside my knee. I stood up so fast my back hit the support post. The basement light flickered once. I didn't run, but I moved backwards up the stairs without taking my eyes off the storage corner, the drain, the open circle in the concrete. I shut the basement door hard and locked it. Then I realized my mistake. I had left the cap half-threaded. I stood in my kitchen with my hand on the lock, breathing, and I could feel the house waiting, patient, not angry, just certain I'd come back. I didn't want to. My whole body was telling me not to. But that sentence from the binder crawled up through my mind again, and this time, it didn't feel like advice. It felt like a rule that kept me safe. Put it back on before you come upstairs. So I unlocked the door and went back down. The basement felt colder than before, like the house had cooled itself while I was gone. The bulb buzzed. The smell of wet soil hit me immediately. The cap was gone, not half-threaded. Gone. The drain was open again. The circle of dampness was darker now, and within it were faint streaks, like something had been set down and lifted again. Set down and lifted, practicing. My hands went numb. I scanned the basement fast with my eyes. The cap wasn't on the water heater. It wasn't on the workbench. It wasn't on the floor. Then I saw it. It sat on the bottom step of the stairs, centered, like it had been offered back to me. My stomach turned. I picked it up and forced myself not to think about what that meant. Something had carried it there. Something had chosen that spot because it knew that's where I would look when I came back down. I crouched, screwed the cap on tight this time, and the moment it sealed, everything shifted. Not physically, the atmosphere. The basement seemed to breathe out, like pressure equalizing. The smell of soil faded slightly, the buzzing light steadied. Then behind me, the mirror cracked again. A second line this time, branching off the first like a vein. I backed away from it, heart hammering. I wanted to leave, but my eyes got caught on the mirror's reflection of the basement behind me. For a second, the reflection didn't match. The boxes in the reflection looked slightly different, stacked at a different angle. The paint cans looked closer together. It was subtle, like a memory misfiring. Then it snapped back. I swallowed hard and kept my eyes off the mirror as I went up the stairs. I didn't sleep at all after that. I sat on the couch with the lights on, listening to the house, waiting for the faucet upstairs to turn on again. At 2:44 a.m., I heard something that finally pushed me past weird into, I am not safe here. A chair slid across the floor upstairs. Not a dramatic scrape, a slow, careful drag, like someone repositioning it. It came from the kitchen. I was in the living room. There was only one chair at the kitchen table, and it hadn't moved since I sat down. I got up and stepped toward the doorway. The chair was halfway out from the table, not pushed back like someone stood up, pulled outward, angled, facing the hallway that led to the basement door. I stood there staring at it, mouth dry. I hadn't moved it. No draft could move it like that. The legs weren't on smooth tile, they were on a rug runner. The chair sat like it had been placed with intention, a listening position. The same idea from the basement translated upstairs. Then the chair moved again, just an inch. A small adjustment, like someone fine-tuning it. My heart hammered so hard I could feel it in my throat. I backed away, not wanting to turn my back on it, and went into the bedroom and shut the door. I shoved my dresser against it because I didn't have a chair to wedge, because the chair was already occupied by whatever idea the house had. In the morning, I finally called the owner. I expected it to ring and ring. I expected voicemail. I expected a polite voice that made me feel stupid. A man answered on the second ring. Hello? I said my name and gave the address. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. I need to ask about the basement drain cap and the notes in the binder. Silence for a beat, then very calmly, is the cap on right now? My stomach dropped. Yes, it's on. Another beat. Okay, keep it on. Don't go down there again. I gripped my phone harder. Why was it off? Why does the binder... He cut me off, not loudly, just firm. Was it off when you found it? Yes. Did you put it back on before you came upstairs? A cold flush spread up my neck. Not the first time. I did later. His exhale sounded tired. You need to listen to me. Do not go down there again. Don't move anything in the basement. Don't try to fix anything. My voice cracked despite my effort. What is it? He didn't answer that. Instead, he said, Are you alone? Yes. Do you have somewhere else you can stay for a couple days? That question landed like a confirmation. I swallowed. You knew. More silence. Then very quietly, like someone admitting something in a church, we try to keep it contained. Contained. I felt my skin tighten. Contained how? He cleared his throat. The cap stays on. That's how. The line pulls. If it finds a way to pull, it pulls more. I stared at my kitchen wall like it was listening in. Pulls what? He didn't say. He avoided it the way you avoid naming something you've lived beside for too long. Instead, he said, You're going to leave the house today. It wasn't a suggestion. I have work, I said, and the normality of that sentence sounded insane in my mouth. You're going to leave, he repeated. Pack what you need, leave the rest. I'll send someone. You'll be released from the lease. My hands shook. What if I don't? What if I stay and keep the cap on? His voice hardened. The cap doesn't stay on because you want it to. It stays on because it's satisfied. You've already shown it you'll go down there. You've already responded. I felt tears prick at my eyes out of sheer anger. So what am I supposed to do? Just let it train me and leave? Yes, he said, because it trains people better than we do. I hung up without saying goodbye. For a full minute, I stood in my kitchen listening to the silence of the house, trying to decide if I was being manipulated by an owner covering up a maintenance issue or by something under my floor learning my schedule. Then I heard water running upstairs again. The bathroom faucet. Steady, clean, like a hand opening it halfway. I didn't go check it this time. I walked to the hallway where the basement door was, and I put my hand on the knob. The knob was warm, not room temperature. Warm, like someone's palm had been resting there. I yanked my hand back like I'd been burned. That was it. I packed a bag without thinking. Clothes, toiletries, my wallet, my car keys. I left the rest. Dishes, boxes, the stupid rolled towel by the living room window. I didn't care. As I moved through the house, I had the overwhelming sensation of being watched from low places. Not from corners or shadows, those obvious horror movie spots. From vents, from drains, from the spaces you don't look at because you've trained yourself not to. I reached for my coat by the kitchen chair. The chair was pulled out from the table again, angled toward the hallway, like it was waiting for someone to sit and listen for the water. I didn't touch it. I didn't move it. I stepped around it. When I opened the front door, the cold air hit my face clean and sharp. The porch light buzzed once, then steadied. I walked down the steps, keys clenched in my fist. Halfway to my car, I glanced back at the basement window. The small rectangle near the ground looked darker than it should have, like there was a curtain pulled inside. And behind it, just for a second, I saw something press against the glass from the inside. Not a face, not eyes, a palm. Too long, too narrow. Fingers spread as if it was testing the boundary. The glass fogged under it in a perfect hand shape, and for a beat, the print stayed like the moisture itself had memory. Then it slid downward, slow, like it was withdrawing. I got in my car and locked the doors. My hands shook so badly I fumbled the key in the ignition. As I backed out of the driveway, I saw the bathroom light upstairs flick on, casting that flat, bright rectangle through the frosted window. Then the light went off. Then on again, like someone pacing in there, flicking the switch with impatience. I drove to a motel on the other side of town and sat in the parking lot for a long time with my forehead against the steering wheel, breathing through my mouth because my nose was suddenly running like I'd stepped into a freezer. I didn't go in right away. I kept thinking, I left the cap on. I left it on. I followed the only rule that mattered. That should have meant something. When I finally went into the motel and got a room, I dropped my bag by the bed and stood in the bathroom, staring at the sink like it might turn on by itself. It didn't. The room was quiet. Normal. Cheap motel normal. I lay down fully clothed and waited for my heart rate to slow. Sometime after midnight, I woke up with that damp paper smell in my nose again. Concrete and wet soil. My eyes snapped open. The motel room was dark except for the red digital clock. I didn't move. I listened. No water, no footsteps, no dragging chair, just my breathing. I turned my head slightly toward the bathroom door, and there, under the crack at the bottom, was a thin line of light. Not the hallway light. The motel hallway didn't have that kind of steady brightness. This was a pale, weak light like a basement bulb. My mouth went dry. I lay perfectly still, staring at that line, and I realized something I hadn't let myself think before. It wasn't that the house wanted the drain open. It wanted me to be the kind of person who checks it, the kind of person who responds, the kind of person who learns the routine. And now that I'd learned it, now that I'd gone down there twice and followed the rule, I couldn't shake the feeling that the training didn't end when I left the building. It ended when it decided I was finished. The line of light under the bathroom door didn't change, didn't flicker, just waited. And I stayed in bed, awake until dawn, because I couldn't make myself stand up and see what was on the other side. I found the space by accident, the way you find things in old houses when you stop treating them like furniture and start treating them like puzzles. It was a rental, a small, older place with an unfinished basement and a laundry room that smelled like dryer lint, no matter how many times I cleaned it. I'd been there long enough that I'd stopped looking closely at the details. The furnace room was at the end of the basement, behind a thin door that never shut properly. Past that was a narrow storage area where the previous tenant had left a stack of warped shelves and a broken mirror leaned against the wall. It was late January, one of those nights where the cold outside makes the house feel hollow inside, like the warmth is being sucked out through every crack. I went down to do laundry before bed. The basement light was a single dangling bulb with a pull chain, and it flickered when the washer kicked on. Nothing unusual. Old wiring. I'd joked about it before. I started a cycle, walked back toward the stairs, and that's when I noticed the draft. Not a general chill, a specific ribbon of cold air brushing the back of my neck as I passed the storage area. I stopped and turned. The broken mirror leaned where it always leaned. The shelves were still stacked, but the air coming from that corner was colder than the rest of the basement, like an open refrigerator door. I stepped closer and the bulb above me buzzed louder for a second. The draft wasn't coming from the wall itself. It was coming from behind the mirror. I set my laundry basket down and grabbed the mirror carefully. The frame was heavy and the glass was cracked but intact. When I pulled it away, the cold air hit my face like I'd opened a freezer. Behind it was a thin door, not a real door, more like a panel, flush with the wall, painted the same color as the concrete blocks around it. No knob, no latch, just a narrow seam and a small metal ring screwed into it, the kind you'd use to pull something open. My heart picked up speed the way it does when you know you found something you weren't supposed to find. I pulled the ring. The panel stuck, then gave with a dry wooden groan. A black gap opened behind it, and the cold air poured out harder, smelling faintly like damp wood and old paper. I aimed my phone flashlight inside. It wasn't a room. It was a crawl space. Low ceiling, dirt floor, and wooden beams overhead. It looked like someone had boxed it in years ago and forgotten it existed. Except it wasn't empty. There were items inside, arranged in a way that didn't look like abandoned storage. A folding chair, a small table, and on the table, a single jar with a lid. I stood there staring at that jar for longer than I want to admit. I couldn't see what was inside it at first. The glass was fogged with condensation from the cold, like it had been kept in there intentionally. My throat felt tight. I told myself out loud, "It's probably nothing." That sentence didn't help. I crouched and crawled into the space, careful not to scrape my back on the low beams. The dirt floor was packed, not loose, like someone had been moving in and out of here regularly. My phone light shook a little as I aimed it at the table. The jar was sealed with a metal ring lid like a mason jar. Inside was something pale and fibrous, coiled and layered like wet rope. Hair. A lot of hair. Not a little clump, not a brushful. Enough that it looked like it had been collected over time. My stomach rolled and I backed out of the crawlspace too fast, scraping my elbow on the panel edge. I stood in the basement, breathing hard, staring at the open seam in the wall as if it might close itself. I should have called someone right then. Police, landlord, anyone. But there's a weird paralysis that happens when you find something like that in your own home. You start trying to build a rational explanation because the alternative is admitting you've been living over something intentional. I told myself it was left behind by a previous tenant, some creepy art project, some weird personal thing stored out of sight. I pulled the panel shut. Then I dragged the mirror back into place, covering it. and I went upstairs, pretending I hadn't just found a jar of hair in a hidden space behind my basement wall. That night, I slept badly, not because I thought something would come out of the crawl space, because I knew something could have gone in. The next day, I tried to act normal, work, errands, small talk. I avoided the basement like it was a personality flaw. Around 6 p.m., my landlord texted, "Hey, just checking in. Everything good with the cold snap? Furnace working okay?" A normal question, the kind of check-in landlords do when pipes are freezing all over town. But the timing was wrong, too precise, too close to my discovery. I replied, "All good." Then I stared at my phone, waiting for the next message like I was bracing for impact. None came. That night at 2:06 a.m., the smell woke me up. Not smoke, not gas. Damp paper. Old, wet cardboard. My bedroom door was open. I always shut it. I like sleeping with the door shut. I sat up, listening. The house was quiet except for the furnace cycling. Then I heard a sound from downstairs, a soft, deliberate thud, like something set down on the kitchen counter. I stayed in bed for a full minute, trying to convince myself it was the house settling, that weird, random noises happen in winter. Then I heard it again. A second thud, a little farther away, like something being placed down in the living room. My mouth went dry. I got out of bed and grabbed the heaviest thing within reach, an old flashlight shaped like a metal baton. Not a weapon, just something that made me feel less empty-handed. I stepped into the hallway. The air smelled stronger now, damp and cold. The basement door at the end of the hall was open, not cracked, open. I stood there staring, and the inside of my chest felt hollow. I knew I'd shut that door the last time I'd been downstairs. I knew it. I walked to it slowly, every step careful, like noise mattered. The basement light was on, that flickering bulb glowing weakly. I didn't go down the stairs right away. I stood at the top and listened, and I heard breathing. Not the normal sound of a house, not pipes, not furnace. A slow inhale and exhale, steady, like someone sitting quietly. From the storage area. From behind where the mirror covered the panel. My whole body tightened. I wanted to run. I wanted to slam the basement door and lock it and pretend the house only existed above ground. Instead, I went down, one step at a time, phone light on, flashlight in my other hand. The basement air hit me cold and damp. The storage area looked the same. The mirror was still leaned against the wall covering the panel. But the draft was stronger, and the smell of damp paper was coming from that corner. I stopped 3 feet away. My brain screamed at me not to touch the mirror, but my hands moved anyway. I grabbed the frame and pulled it back. The panel was open, wide open. The crawl space beyond was darker than before, like the darkness inside had depth, and the table was closer. It hadn't been that close to the opening yesterday. The chair was closer too, as if someone had moved them forward, like they'd been preparing. The jar on the table was gone. My stomach dropped. Then, inside that crawl space, just past the table, my phone light caught something else. A line of fresh dirt disturbed on the packed floor. A track. Like something heavy had been dragged from deeper in the space toward the opening. I crouched, shining the light, and I saw the end of it. A long strip of damp paper half buried in the dirt. I reached in and pulled it out. It was a deed. Not for my rental, for a different address. But my name was typed on it, clean and official, under grantee. My name. I stared at it until my vision blurred. I didn't sign anything. I didn't buy anything. I didn't even own a house. My hands shook. I backed away from the crawl space, deed in hand, and looked around the basement like someone might be standing behind a support beam. The basement was empty, but the air felt occupied, like the space had rules and I'd broken them just by looking. My phone buzzed, a new message from my landlord. "One more thing, don't move anything in the basement storage area. Old stuff left from the previous owner, just leave it as is." I read it twice. Then I heard the soft thud again, this time from upstairs, from my kitchen, like something being set down, careful and deliberate. I ran up the stairs without thinking, heart pounding so hard it hurt. The kitchen light was on, and on the counter sat the jar. The same jar, same metal ring lid, same fogged glass, only now it was warm. Not hot, warm, like it had been held in someone's hands. I didn't touch it. I just stood there staring like my body had forgotten how to do anything else. Something inside the jar shifted. Not a big movement, not a jump, a slow settling, like wet hair sliding slightly in liquid. And then I heard a sound from behind me, a chair leg scraping softly across the floor. I turned. My dining chair, one I'd used all week, had moved out from under the table. It was angled toward the hallway, toward the basement door, like it was inviting me to sit and watch. I backed up until my spine hit the refrigerator. I couldn't breathe right. The jar sat on the counter like a delivered package. The deed was still in my hand. My landlord's message glowed on my phone screen, and the damp paper smell was stronger than ever, like the house itself was exhaling. I left. I didn't pack. I didn't shut off lights. I didn't grab anything but my keys and my phone and the deed because I was terrified to leave it behind. I drove to a 24-hour gas station and sat in the parking lot with the engine running, staring at my hands. They smelled faintly like wet soil. When I finally opened my palm, I realized the deed paper was damp too, as if it had been stored in that crawl space for years instead of minutes. I called the police. I told them I found a hidden crawl space, suspicious items, and a deed with my name on it. They came. They went into my house. They walked through my basement. They pulled the mirror away, and the panel was sealed shut. No ring, no seam, just painted concrete block like it had never existed. They looked at me like I was either lying or losing it. The jar was gone too. So was the chair's position. Everything looked normal. The officer handed me my keys and told me gently to maybe get some rest and call my landlord about maintenance concerns. I didn't argue. I couldn't. I moved out 2 days later. I didn't get my deposit back. I didn't fight it, I just left. The deed is still in my glove compartment, folded, damp-stained. Every time I try to throw it away, I picture that chair angled toward the basement and that jar appearing on my counter like it had been delivered. And sometimes, this is the part I hate admitting, sometimes I wake up in whatever place I'm staying now, and I smell damp paper for a second, faint as a memory, like something followed me, not by footsteps, but by paperwork.